Hello and welcome to the Nordic Football Podcast, Season 2, Episode 5. We are back and like a Zlatan Ibrahimovic half volley from 35 yards out, we are ready to go and bang into the new season in Sweden. The season in Norway has also returned from the break, so we have a bumper show today. Both leagues will be reviewed by myself, Jonathan Fadugba, and my esteemed co-host Steve Wyss. Steve, talk to me.
Now then. How are you doing, Jonathan? First round of Sweden. I'm sure you enjoyed all the matches. I caught one of the Swedish games this week myself, the Norrköping match, along with a bumper round of goals in Norway. So we've got loads to talk about on this episode, haven't we?
Yes, and you must be itching to get back into the Norwegian football league. We've had a few weeks break and obviously a bumper interview, so we'll get onto that. The format for this show today, we're going to start with Sweden, day one in the Allsvenskan 2018. We're going to begin with that. We're going to review everything, and then we're going to move on to Norway and the Eliteserien, which has returned now for the latest round. And we're going to intersperse that with a bit more general chit chat on our different other talking points. So stay tuned. We've got a good show coming for you, and we're going to get straight into it, Steve. We're going to start with the Allsvenskan 2018, which kicked off this weekend, aren't we?
Yeah, we're going to start with that first round in Sweden, and well, you're the man up there. So where do you want to start? What do you think? The champions, Malmö, is that the match? They beat Elfsborg 2-1. All the goals scored inside the first 25 minutes. And, within a couple of minutes, one of your men to watch for 2018, Svanberg, scored an absolute scorcher, didn't he? Absolute pearler, this one.
Yes, I can't deny I was pretty happy with the that one that came off. Mattias Svanberg, it's no secret. I'm not really being a clairvoyant on that one. Many people have tipped him to be a hot player for this season to watch, and he proved why, really. A few minutes on the clock, and real beauty. If you haven't seen it, get it on YouTube. Malmö, the midfielder, the 19-year-old, with a lovely left foot sort of half volley, smash bang into the corner, and it set Malmö on their way to a 2-1 victory. Elfsborg, a difficult opponent, so it was a tough place to go, really. But I think if one thing we've already seen this season from both the Swedish Cup games and also this game today, Malmö are there to be taken seriously.
Always have to be taken seriously, don't they? I mean, they know how to win matches, and the Elfsborg actually equalised, but Malmö immediately went ahead. One of their new signings, I do believe.
Yeah, that's right. Arne Traustason is the man who came up with the winner. And yeah, he looks like an interesting signing, actually. He's an experienced player. He's won the league with Norrköping in 2015. He's played in Greece, Austria. He's also played in the Eliteserien, so I don't know if you're aware of him, to be honest. But Icelandic international. The goal was fairly simple, routine, kind of tap in, but he was lively, actually, and he played on the wide. He played out wide, and it was a very good debut, really, a debut to remember.
What did you think of the Malmö lineup then for this game, John? Tactically, what sort of things were they doing on the field?
Yeah, well, Traustason was an important player in there. They obviously have forward Batshuayu as well, who's been signed from Östersund in central midfield with Svanberg. Soren Reitz also played on out wide. He's come from IFK Göteborg, so it was a fairly fresh new lineup, really, for Malmö. Berang Safari kept his place on the left, but Erik Larsson played on as a right back. He's obviously come from Gisfundsval, and he looked quite good. With Marcus Rosenborg, obviously experienced player, and Jeremiev up front. What I liked about Malmö, to be honest, what they seem to be doing, they've really laid a marker down, I have to say, including the Swedish Cup games. They look like they can adapt to any tactical situation. So what I liked about them is that they managed to sort of find a way to beat Elfsborg. Speaking after the match, the manager kind of talked about how players out wide, and they pushed players out wide to kind of get around Elfsborg's midfield. And they've shown a lot of fluidity in the way they've approached different games. Every single game they've approached it differently. We remember how last season, obviously, Magnus Wolf was a talking point, and the rotation of Magnus Persson's squad. It looks like it's going to happen again, to be honest. Every game they have a different tactical plan, and it worked again here. And so it's exciting times for them. Jimmy Tellin, the Elfsborg manager, said that they struggled with the pressing side of their game, and they need to work on their pressing. But Malmo just too strong.
Yeah, same old with Malmo. Let's move on to the first Sunday game, and Hammarby got off to a winning start, beat Sirius 3-1, and the first hat-trick of the season in Sweden from Zlatan Hamad. A couple of penalties in there, but I do believe Hammarby were quite impressive in this fixture, John.
Yeah, I guess it's a question for our listeners, really. Do hat-tricks really count if it's 2 penalties? I'm always a little bit harsh on my hat-trick penalty hat-tricks, but hat-trick's a hat-trick, I guess. And yeah, as you say, Zlatan Hamad, 27-year-old, and he's got his hat-trick. 2 of them were, like I say, penalties. 1 was a decent finish, but I was impressed with Hammarby, to be honest. Their fans, they brought the fans towards for the game. Very well-supported club, as we've previously talked about, and yeah, they look good.
Just before we move on, I mean, what is your personal opinion on penalties? If you're given a second penalty, should the same man take that kick? If you were the manager, would you say, no, I'm having someone differently on? Or would you just go with the same original guy?
I'd always go with the guy if he scored it, yeah. If he's missed it, I would probably ask someone else to take it potentially. But I think you've always got to judge it as a case-by-case thing. I think penalties are a lot about confidence rather than necessarily technique. Some players who are just excellent at taking them, whereas some players with great technique hate penalties. So I think it's often a confidence thing. What do you think?
If it's me, I think I would actually change the taker the second time, unless you've got someone like a Harry Kane or an Alan Shearer who you're not going to get the ball off them. I would rotate it around a bit. I don't like the idea. If someone scored, the goalkeeper's already faced a penalty from that guy in the match. And I would always get a bit wary myself. That's just me, maybe. I don't know. But it depends how many good penalty takers you've got, I suppose, doesn't it? If you've got 2 or 3 good ones, you've got that luxury. But if you've only got one sort of good main one, then I suppose you've got to stick with him. But it's interesting that those penalties were only about a few minutes apart in the game. All right, half-time did split it, but it was like a penalty 2 minutes before half-time and a penalty about 3 or 4 minutes after. But
yeah. Well, Hamad buried them both, so in a way it's kind of irrelevant. And then he got his hat-trick. Sirius were quite poor, actually, I thought. I was a bit surprised in how they played, but Hamad-by looked good, and some of their new signings look quite interesting as well. I think I kind of criticised Neto Borgs on the last podcast in terms of how they'd scouted him, but he actually looked quite good in the left-back position. So, yeah, I thought Hamad-by had a good shape to their team. The new signings fitted in quite well. Fairly comfortable. Obviously, was it a penalty or not? And we've had chats, haven't we, privately about VAR and that kind of thing. That was another sort of talking point, wasn't it? But I thought it was a bit of a harsh penalty, really. But Hamad-by did enough to get the win.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if VAR would have sorted that one out, to be honest. It was one of those which it depends which way you look at it, doesn't it? I mean, I think it was a bit harsh as well. But Sirius only actually had 2 goal attempts in that game. They scored one of them. It was an absolute belter. But worrying times, perhaps, for Sirius going forward, although not an easy place to go. Let's move on to another team that you thought would struggle this year, and that's Trelleborg. They got beaten by IFK in the opener 3-1 as well. And, I mean, what did you make of this fixture, John? I mean, IFK were favourites for the game, but there was some talk about it being a little bit of a banana skin, but they put those fears to bed, didn't they?
They did indeed, and I have to say I'm a little bit excited about this EFK team. Already they just look much better, much fresher, much more enthusiastic, enterprising. There's a lot to like about this new EFK, I have to be honest, and far more than the sort of stale version of last season. They raced into the lead, obviously 20 minutes gone. Elias Omarsson got his first goal. He got 2 in the game, which means that he's now scored 2 more in, I think, 49 minutes than he did in the entirety of last season in the league. A great start for him. And, yeah.
Well, the first was an absolute gift from the goalkeeper, wasn't it? Shambolic keeping there. I mean, just a regulation pass straight to him. I mean, you got to finish it. But talk about gifted on a plate. I thought the third goal from IFK was a really good one. Sakor, who I've always rated, actually, I must say myself, from his time in Norway. But fresh new team for IFK this year. What was different about them compared to the previous season?
Well, for a start, they have a new manager. So, yeah, young manager, the youngest manager in the league, Poyas Bargi, and I really like his ideas, actually. I read an interesting interview with him recently, and, yeah, what he's trying to implement, I think, promises exciting times for EFCO fans. I think they've got their recruitment much better than last year. I think they've started to sort out some of the deadwood. They've shipped it out and they've kind of brought in some enterprising signings. I think Omarson, as I mentioned on the last podcast, I believe he's going to have a good season. I said it on Twitter. I think he's in line for a good season, and he proved me right in the sort of this first game with 2 goals. They've got Amina Fain, who's come from AIK. I like the performance of Mix Discord. Actually, I thought he played well. They're playing in a sort of a 3-4-3 now. They're kind of flooding the midfield with a sort of diamond, and then obviously playing the 3 up front off them. And it just works really well. It looks really good. I think Trelleborg, to be honest, their passing out from the back was shocking. They gave the ball away so many times, sort of playing out the ball from the back. And EFCO just kind of capitalised on that, and then often on the counter-attack broke. In fact, Martin should have had a hat-trick. He missed a sitter in the final minute to make it 4-1. But yeah, I'm excited about this team. I think they did well. Trelleborg held their own, but in the end, they weren't good enough.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like they were good there, IFK. But I mean, Trelleborg, is it going to be the long, hard season that you expected? I mean, did they look like an Allsvenskan side to you out there?
Well, they got the equaliser. It was quite unexpected at the time, but it came through Jovanovic, who he's a veteran in that team. He played in their 2009 Allsvenskan campaign. He's been there for a very long time, and he's a good player. It was a good goal. There was moments where they looked like they may challenge, but to be honest, I always felt EFCO were going to win. They looked much more dynamic, much more enterprising. Like I said, Trelleborg really struggled to keep possession from the back. I think they're going to struggle in the way they build play. Maybe they should just be going for a long ball and kind of looking for a bit more of a rugged, a bit less entertaining maybe style. But playing through the lines doesn't look like it's going to work for them at the moment unless they get on the training ground. But I think this is a good EFCO team, so I think there'll be easier games for Trelleborg to judge them on. But yeah, EFCO just had too much for them in this one.
Yeah, it wasn't a particularly good weekend for the newly promoted teams. Dalkurd lost, Bromma-Poikina lost. Let's talk about Dalkurd against AIK. It was a 2-0 defeat for them. I mean, was it a case of Dalkurd or Dalturd, you know?
You've crowned that one in, haven't you? That is shocking.
I'll get my coat, don't worry.
Yeah, 3 out of 10.
But I mean, I had an eye on this game, and it wasn't particularly captivating, John. Typical AIK, really. They just never seemed that exciting, but they got the job done, didn't they?
They did, yeah. And the first goal came from a shocking goalkeeping mistake, to be honest. I think the keeper should have had it. It looked like a stunner, but then when you watch the replay, the goalkeeper's halfway across his line. So I think that was disappointing from Dalkurds' perspective. They obviously brought the fans. It's their first ever game in the Allsvenskan. A lot of travelling fans from Uppsala. And just generally in the whole of Sweden, really, they're obviously the Kurdish team. Many Kurdish sort of immigrants to Sweden from all over the country went to watch them. So yeah, it was a massive day for their fans. There were a few crowd disturbances that stopped the game for a little bit. I think there were some explosions in the crowd, sort of tifo type things, flares, which stopped the play for a little bit. But yeah, it was a fairly routine game. I didn't think the game was that enterprising, to be honest. I'll be honest, I thought it was fairly boring, but nothing's, that it was like eating a chocolate cake compared to the GIF Sundsvall game, which we'll come on to later. That was the definition of boring. But yeah, it was a routine win for AIK. I think we know that they're going to have bigger challenges to come. It was a test for Dalkurd, but if I was being positive about Dalkurd, I'd say they actually look fairly decent in the way they built the play. And I think they look like they will score goals as the season progresses.
And they didn't really concede that many big opportunities, did they, either in the game? I mean, by and large, they kept it relatively tight. Yeah,
you're right. And there's a player I think will do quite well this season for them called Rewan Amin in the midfield. I thought he looked decent at number 5. Banu Marzuk up front, I think, looks good. They've got some decent players, actually. I think on the evidence of what I saw today, I think Dalkurd look probably one of the better promoted sides compared to Trelleborg and maybe Bromma-Poikina. But you saw the Bromma-Poikina game, didn't you, against Norrköping yourself? So maybe you can lift a light on a bit of that one.
Well, it was an absolutely mental game, actually, John. I mean, Norrköping apparently had 33 goal attempts in this game, and I can believe it. They were all over them. The amount of big chances Bromma-Poikina conceded was ridiculous. And I was actually doing my head in at one point in the second half because somehow Bromma equalised against the run of play. At that point, I had a bet on the game myself, in running bet on the game over 3 goals. And there was chance after chance missed. And I thought, bloody hell, this is going to be one of these stupid 1-alls. Bromma actually missed a massive headed chance to go 2-1 up themselves. But Norrköping got a late penalty and they deserved the victory. They should have won by about 4-5-1. I mean, they were so dominant. It's maybe worrying that they didn't convert their chances well enough. But I thought Bromma looked a little bit out of their depth, to be honest, defensively. If they're going to approach games like this, then they're only going to be able to outscore teams around them at the bottom of the table. I mean, Norrköping are going to be sort of mid-table, aren't they, this year, maybe a little bit higher. So it's not like they were facing one of the really elite teams. So I think it was concerning how porous they looked at the back. You know, fair play, Norrköping played well, but for me, Bromma, they've got to tighten up considerably.
From what I could tell, they played a new system at Norrköping. Is that correct? I think they've been playing 3-4-3 in pre-season. Did they go with that again in this game?
Well, it was one of those games where formations kind of went out the window a little bit, if you know what I mean. Especially when one team's so dominant, you've got so many players overlapping. It was a very attacking formation, though. It felt like there was wave after wave of attack. A lot of players were drifting in and out of different positions. Bromma themselves, there was no rigidity to them as well. So it got a bit manic, really. No discipline from either team in that regard. But, yeah, Norrköping got the job done overall. I was quite impressed with them. Fair play. You know, maybe give them some credit here. But I mean, just worrying how easy chances were gifted to them. And it could have been definitely a lot more goals for Norrköping had they been a bit more clinical in this game. So
let's move on to a bigger game, which we haven't mentioned yet, which was Östersund's Djurgården. Don't know if you saw this one, Steve, but yeah, this was a big game in Sweden, and we haven't really talked about it yet.
I was gonna hopefully try and see it, but it was on Easter Sunday, and I was basically opening Easter eggs with my kids, so it didn't get quite round to it. But I mean, 1-0, Djurgården have won this game, which is a massive victory for them in the grand scheme of things, isn't it? Considering Östersund's are so highly regarded this season, didn't look just statistically like particularly exciting game, but a massive win nevertheless. What's your opinion of this fixture?
Yeah, it was an interesting one. I think, as I mentioned on the season preview pod, I think, which you can still listen to, by the way. Obviously, you can subscribe to our iTunes and, you know, please leave a comment, that kind of thing, if you enjoy us. But yeah, you can go back and listen to our previous editions. I mentioned on that one that I think Djurgården are going to be a tip for the title, and they're going to be an outsider in that bracket of sort of Malmo, Djurgården, maybe Östersunds and AIK. I think Djurgården are going to be a bit of an outsider, and they proved why in this game. It's worth bearing in mind they've got an incredible defensive record. I don't think they've conceded a goal in their last 5 games, if you include Swedish Cup. So this was another one where they faced a bit of an onslaught. Östersunds at times looked like they would equalise. Haven't seen the expected goals or anything like that, but yeah, Östersunds did have a few chances. But Djurgården again resolute at the back, and everybody's talking about the man from GIF Sundsvall, Marcus Danielsson, a centre-back who did really, really well in this game and obviously popped up with a winner as well, a winning goal. So he's fitted into the team really well. Obviously, they're missing some of their, you know, Jonas Olsson obviously is not playing at the back. So they're missing actually the first choice defenders really, but they still managed to keep another clean sheet. And I have to say, Djurgården are looking good.
Yeah, 2 really big wins for them. Obviously, the Swedish Cup semi-final, then this one against Östersunds. Has their defence really tightened up this year?
Massively so, yeah. And I said, like I said on the previous show as well, I said about Ulvestad, I think it gives balance to their midfield, which will make, you know, Kim Karlsson maybe not as much missed. I just think they look a little more sort of resolute. It's not just a defensive effort; it's kind of the midfield as well. Protects the back 4 well. Danielsson is a good signing. They've, you know, got Jonathan Augustinsson, who's the brother of Ludwig, who I like. I think they just look solid. You know, like I said, Özcan, Malcolm Mitchell's been there for a year now. He's had the chance to implement his own methods, which I think he's doing well, and his ideas, and I think that's just added to the sort of defensive solidity. And yeah, they just got it right. Like I say, they rode their luck at times, but that's a massive win, really. It puts Östersunds on a bit of a down. I think there's been a lot of hype about Östersunds, and I've bought into that as well myself. I can't deny it, but they're back down to earth with a bit of a bump there, and Djurgården have sort of shown that they're not to be messed with this season.
Well, that said, one swallow doesn't necessarily make a summer. It doesn't mean Östersunds are not going to challenge at the top either, does it? So early days, but great win for Djurgården nevertheless. Now, 2 more games, results that we're going to talk about. Häcken beat Kalmar 1-0, a late penalty there, and then Sundsvall against Örebro 0-0. What have you got to say about those 2 games?
Well, the less said about GIF Sundsvall Örebro, the better, really. The best way to summarise that game is about 60 minutes into it, they camera cut to some away fans who were actually behind the goal, sledding down the snow. They were that bored that it was a snow-covered away end, and they were sledging down it. I mean, you can even see the pictures online. I've never seen anything like it, to be honest, in a football stadium.
I can't blame them because there was only 1 shot on target in the whole match, which is staggering, isn't it?
Indeed, yeah. And to be honest, when the camera cutting to the crowd was the most exciting part of the game. I actually enjoyed that more than I did enjoy the match. It was awful. So let's move on, really. Häcken Kalmar. Again, I thought that was a bit of a slow-paced game. At times, it was like a bit of a pre-season friendly. It picked up in places. Obviously, Häcken are always very good on the break. You know, they've got a compact stadium and a lot of pacey players up front. But I didn't think they offered a huge amount. Obviously, got the win, but I think a shout out goes to the Kalmar goalkeeper as well, who made a lot of good saves. Hag Johansson in goal, but penalty won it with a debutant, Ebbo Al Kabir, who buried his penalty on his debut.
Okay, so that's round 1 complete. Who were the 3 teams that caught your eye the most?
3 teams I think that stood out this week and who deserve the biggest shout outs, I would say, are Hamad-by. I would also say Djurgården, IFK Göteborg. They're the 3 teams for me who most impressed. I think Malmö obviously deserve a shout out, but they are the best team in the league by some distance. So it's not really an unexpected result. But a bonus point for Malmö maybe. But Hamad-by, Djurgården, IFK will be interesting to watch. And incidentally, IFK and Hamad-by play each other this weekend in Gothenburg, so big game ahead.
Yeah, I would add Norrköping to that as well, although quite who they've beaten, I'm not quite sure yet. It might be nothing. You know, Bromma might be absolutely terrible, but fair play to Norrköping. Keep an eye on them after that performance. Okay, well, we're going to talk about something a little bit different now. And, well, it's certainly Swedish related for sure. And that is Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Everyone's talking about him at the moment after his incredible debut for LA Galaxy at the weekend. But there's obviously quite a bit of a debate about him at the moment regarding the Swedish World Cup squad, I do believe, John.
Yeah, and I read an interesting quote actually earlier today, which said that doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will. And yeah, a lot of people have been doubting Zlatan, and the guy knows how to answer his doubters, doesn't he? Unbelievable goal. I was just in awe. I couldn't actually believe it when I saw it. I mean, the interesting thing I like about Zlatan is he just defies kind of like cynicism. There was obviously, I mean, he took out a full page advert in the LA Times saying, "Dear LA, sort of thank you, regards Zlatan." Yeah, no, you're welcome. Sorry, dear LA, you're welcome from Zlatan. Sort of saying, you're lucky to have me here, type thing. So the guy is not short of like Hollywood antics, is he? And he's in the right place for that. But there was a lot of cynicism. People saying, "Well, look at this guy. He's old. He's aging. He can't do it anymore." And he just pops up. The LAFC were 3-0 up, and Zlatan comes on, and they win 4-3.
The doubters, I must admit, I was one of the doubters. He's a great signing for the club itself because Galaxy have always gone after superstars, Galacticos, David Beckham type players. But I have to say, I was very worried whether he was past it. I mean, he's coming off a major knee injury, and at his age, that is bloody hard to recover from usually. And I just wondered whether he was simply going there for one last big paycheck, all the hype, and he'll still get a few goals anyway, even if he's nowhere near as good as he was, because it's just the sort of league where loads of goals are scored. But they were 3-0 down. I watched this game, and LAFC were really, really good. Carlos Vela's really good for them, by the way. and it looked game over. In a way, I was thinking, well, what's the point of bringing him on? What can he do when they're 3-0 down? You're almost better off waiting a little bit, for next week. But he comes on, he made a massive impact. Already they've got 2 or 3 guys marking him. The equalising goal, I couldn't believe it. He's had some moments over the years, but that was ridiculous. You could say, what's the goalkeeper doing for his winner? But it's just, as soon as he came on the field, the atmosphere changed. It was unbelievable. And I think he's clearly, he's still got a lot left in him. He could probably play till 40 if he wanted to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like I say, obviously you're a doubter there, so you're admitting it and you're holding your hands up. But I don't doubt Zlatan. I think he's an incredible player. He's a legend. He makes football fun. I like everything about him, to be honest, and that's just not me being biased. But the goal was just out of this world, something extraordinary. Coming on, your team's 3-0 down, and you come back and you win 4-3, and you score 2 30-yard screamer half volley, and then a sort of last-minute winner to win it. It's just fairy tale stuff. I think the guy's a legend, and yeah, he just makes football fun, in my opinion. But yeah, the reason that we're talking about this, obviously, is because he's Swedish, and he's the all-time top goal scorer. He's the legend. He's 9 times, I think, or 10 times Swedish Player of the Year. But there's a big debate about whether he will actually make the World Cup squad. Now, there's been some sort of debates about Jan Andersson, the Swedish national team manager, whether he'll pick him. And yeah, there's a big debate about it, Steve. I don't know if you've heard about that.
I have heard about this, and I think what people don't like about it, the ones who don't want him in the squad, is that he seems to think it's up to him if he's included in the squad or not. Basically, he comes back on his terms. It's one of those situations where, I don't know, do you think he should be in the World Cup squad, ultimately, John? He's obviously good enough. He'd be their best player. So for me, it's a no-brainer. But morally, should he be in there?
Well, at the end of the day, morals. In terms of morals, I think it's subjective. I know what you're saying. Obviously, ultimately, Zlatan is said to the Swedish national team that if I want to be in the squad, I will be in the squad. And I suppose in a sort of fairly conservative country like Sweden, where people are not known for being brash in that sense, it can rub people up the wrong way. He's a 36-year-old, obviously. This is going to be his final World Cup, or final kind of kind of game on the national stage. But for me, if Zlatan wants to be in the World Cup squad, he goes in the World Cup squad. He's proved himself. Look at the 2 goals. The guy is an impact player, and who does Sweden really have that can replace him? I think it's a no-brainer. But I think by challenging the manager publicly, and obviously he publicly even said, the manager needs to worry about his squad and not start talking about me. So he really is kind of calling out the manager in a way and dictating, which, that is an affront to certain managers, isn't it? Can he get over his own ego, the Swedish national team manager, and kind of pick him? But for me, it's a no-brainer. He has to go to the World Cup from a neutral point of view. And I also think just for Sweden, he's a winner. Zlatan, everywhere he goes, he wins, and he brings a positive mindset and mentality. He's not just a caricature. He's actually a big dressing room part of any squad. So for me, it's 100% yes. He has to go.
I would agree. Completely. It's a no-brainer. He should be in the squad. What do the listeners think? Should Zlatan Ibrahimovic be in Sweden's World Cup squad? Tweet us at Nordic Football. Maybe we'll even set up a poll for this one, John, as well. So for me, he should be in. You think he should be in. But there's obviously people out there who don't think he should be in. So let us know why as well. Why shouldn't he be in if you don't think he should? Okay, we're going to have a break now. And coming up after the interval, we're going to be talking about the Norwegian Eliteserien, which is 3 rounds old now. So we'll see you in a little bit.
Welcome back to part 2 of the Nordic Football Podcast, Season 2, Episode 5. It's the 3rd week of the Eliteserien. We're moving to Norway now. Steve has got plenty of analysis for us, and I'm just looking at the results from this past weekend, Steve, and to be honest, I'm looking at quite a few big results. There seems to be a lot going on in Norway at the moment. I'm seeing 4-1s, 3-0s, 3-0s, 4-1s. What is going on, Steve?
There's been goals galore since the start of the season, which I can't put my finger on it because the first 2 rounds before the international break were played in really cold conditions. and harsh environments. And I did not. I expected quite a few tight, low-scoring contests, but for some reason the matches really opened up. And then on Easter Monday, well, it was just mental.com. There was loads of goals. I mean, a lot of them were gifted by defenders. There was some absolutely shite goalkeeping on show, as always. I mean, it's one of those leagues where I'm watching shots and you expect the goalkeeper to save, and then the back of the net's bulging. It constantly seems the theme this season. There's been some awful goalkeeping on show. And, goals galore. It's good to see, though, that teams are willing to be a bit more positive. Right now, there doesn't really seem to be an out-and-out defensive side in the league, which I'm personally really happy about.
Well, I guess the best place to start is with the champions, Rosenborg, and they were held to a 1-1 draw with Odd, which kind of surprised me, I have to be honest. I would have just assumed they would win that game. And they're actually winless now, aren't they? So far all season. What is going on with Rosenborg?
Well, they had a tough first match at Sarpsborg. They lost that one. You can't knock them for that. They should have hammered Kristiansund, but somehow drew 2-2. And then against Odd, I think it was a fair result, really. Some might say Odd were the better team. And this is an Odd side that hasn't looked great so far. They'd had 2 losses heading into this fixture. It was very worrying for Rosenborg. They just didn't have enough intensity, desire, fight, creativity, perhaps. They've certainly missed Samuel Adegbenro, who's injured for 6 weeks now. They could have done with him in a game like that. But they're also making a lot of mistakes at the back, John. The goal they conceded was an hilarious own goal where a defender's trying to clear it off the line. It comes off his own man. So everything seems to be going wrong for them. And already they're well behind at the top of the table. It may be a case that, they won the league the last 2 or 3 years and they're getting a little bit complacent. Combine that with a little bit of a tricky fixture list, and all is not going their way. But I don't think too many people in Norway are going to be complaining about it.
No, looking at the table with 3 games played, they're 12th, which is just above relegation zone, which is incredible, to be honest. What's the key thing that's maybe gone wrong very quickly before we move on? If you could sum it up in a word or a couple of sentences, what is the key thing Rosenborg need to address going forward?
I think they've got to regain that desire and drive again. They just haven't looked interested at times this year in certain games. The only real time they showed any intensity for me this season was the first 20 minutes after half-time against Kristiansund, when they did look good. That was against Kristiansund. Never once today did they really look like scoring. I mean, their goal was a fluky free kick, which was a goalkeeping howler again. So they've got to get that offense working. But without Adegbenro, I think it's going to be a struggle, but there's too many things going wrong, to be honest, John. But I wouldn't worry too much about it yet. They're going to be in the top 3 come the end of the season. They still might win the title, but worrying times for Rosenborg.
Well, it's been a while since we've mentioned Niklas Bentner, and we're not going to mention him this week because we're going to move on. But it doesn't sound like he's doing too much so far. We're going to head to Molde. They are top of the league. I see they've scored 8 goals and conceded 1 goal. Pretty good start for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer there.
Yeah, I mean, what they've done, they beat Sandefjord 5-0 on the opening day, but their last 2 wins have been much more workmanlike, and they can win matches in different ways. That's what I like about Molde now. They can shut up shop away from home and nick a 1-0, or they're capable of outscoring teams as well. So there's plenty of strings in their bow, which is encouraging going forward. I think they've got a really good balanced squad. That's the key with them. You wouldn't say they've got a weak area, especially now that their goalkeeper, Linda, is starting to show signs of becoming a quality stopper at this level. So, everything's really working well for Molde at the moment, and they'll be pleased to have picked up 3 wins out of 3. All right, maybe they faced a couple of crap opponents, but they'll take it. It's Molde against Rosenborg this coming weekend. So if they win that, they could find themselves well clear of RBK. So that's obviously a huge fixture.
Do you think they are a legitimate title challenger? Are they really gonna do it?
Yes, they've been better than I expected. I knew they'd be good this year, but I didn't think they'd be quite as good as this. I think just that there's more cohesiveness in the team. Last year, they got very lucky with a lot of results. This time around, they deserve to win all their 3 matches, and there looks to be even probably a little bit more in the tank as well. So, the squad just looks generally better. Solskjaer seems to have regained a bit of his, drive, desire. He looks a lot more happy on the sidelines and also a bit more focused as well. So, massive challenger. And if they beat Rosenborg, well, they go favourite for the league.
In your opinion, how good a manager is Solskjaer in terms of the Eliteserien? Is he in the top bracket, or is he got something to prove?
That's a good question, actually. I think, honestly, part of me still thinks he's a bit overrated. If you look at the other jobs he's done, like at Cardiff, he never really did much there, did he? I think he seems to have... He looks better this year, though. Look, managers can... Like football players, managers can go in and out of form. And I felt he got a little bit stale at Mulder in the last year or two. So I think he's just freshened things up a little bit, changed the formation around. He's good. Is he in the top bracket? Yeah, of course he's in the top bracket, in the top 4 or 5 bracket. I wouldn't have him in the top 2 or 3, but at the moment he's doing very well. I'm quite impressed with how he's approaching the games.
Let's move on then to a team who've been a bit of a, I don't know if there's a prize package. Ian Birchnell, we had in a recent podcast, which you can still listen to. He did tip them a couple of times, but they're doing quite well, and that's Sarpsborg.
Yes, they've... the big problem was pre-season, loads of players coming in and out of the club, and could they settle down quickly? Well, they have done, and beat Rosenborg. It got a tough draw away from home against Lillestrøm, which was played in ridiculously cold conditions. But they beat Vålerenga today 3-0, and this is a team that knows how to get the job done. They look confident. They are a legitimate title challenger as well, for sure. And the new players have done well. That's a good win against Vålerenga, who I have to give them a shout out. They look quite good in their first 2 games. They've got 6 points on the board. They've been surprisingly good. But Sarpsborg, for me, again, a really good balanced squad, especially defensively. They look tight, really. I mean, 2 clean sheets, and the goals they conceded against Lillestrøm, one was a goalkeeper error. So the actual back 4 are performing really well at the moment. That is their big strength, I would say. But they're, again, good balanced squad, and they're playing with confidence. You can clearly see there's a belief. Their manager, Guy Backer, he could be the best manager in this league right now, to be honest with you.
What do you put their form down to? Is it just the manager itself, or have they bought a few players maybe who have impacted things? The
club has a winning culture now. It's in a really good place. It's so well managed off the field as well as on it, and I think you can come in. They obviously recruit really well, and they bring players in not just because of the technical qualities, but mental qualities. I think they go for players with the right character that fit in with their squad, with their club. And they're a really well-oiled machine just in all areas of the field. Yeah, some of their new signings have done well. Yunus Tam at the back has impressed me quite a bit. But, in this game against Vålerenga, they went to the old faithful Patrick Mortensen, who can be a bit of a goal machine because he's going to get loads of chances here at Sarpsborg. They put loads of crosses into the box, and he's so dangerous in the air and on these sort of flick downs and poaching. So massive, massive challenger for the title.
Interesting thoughts there, Steve. Thank you very much. We're going to move now to a result that I found pretty shocking, to be honest. I watched them on the opening day of the season, and they looked very good. I was surprised about this one. IK Start battered 4-1.
Well, yeah, Start 1, Sandefjord 4. And in terms of the actual result on paper, this is, for me, the biggest shock of the round. I did not expect. I thought it'd be the other way around. The Start looks really good against Tromsø on the opening day, and they look really good here for quite a lot of the match. They got themselves ahead. They could have gone 2 or 3-0 up, and I think if that had happened, then it would have been a different story because Sandefjord would probably have collapsed again. But they stupidly conceded a goal before half-time from a corner, and I think first half stats were something like 10-1 in attempts. Sandefjord had 1 proper effort on goal, and they scored from it. So really, it should have been 2-3-0 at half-time, and it goes 1-1. And second half, I think that they hit the post, Start did, and they had a couple of other big opportunities. They dominated the fixture for the most part. But then they got hit by a sucker punch. Sandefjord made a great substitution. They brought on Pontus Engblom, ex-Stroms Godset man, and he scored 2 goals in the last 20-25 minutes. And it just seemed, when Start fell behind, they panicked. They left themselves far too open. And it was another side to the game which is perhaps concerning. And we were all talking about their really nice, fluid offense and midfield, but defensively, well, they were crap. I mean, dear me, they were far too exposed. So maybe they're the sort of team, if they actually fall behind in the game, things aren't going to go very well for them. So it's a match that they should have won 4-1 and ended up losing it 4-1 because of really poor decisions at the end. Despite all that, I would like to say well done to Sandefjord for winning this game. I think it's a really massive result for them. I know times have been pretty tough there since the start of the year, and this is just the sort of victory they need to turn their season around, perhaps. There's been a lot of pressure, a lot of negative press about them. And, for all they certainly rode their luck in the first half, and I think they'll be the first to admit that. But I think the second half, they came up with a really good tactical game plan, and they made the right substitutions at the right time, and they took their chances. It's as simple as that. They showed their extra year of Eliteserien experience in that second half, and absolute big credit to them for finishing the match really strongly and getting the 3 points, which I'm sure is going to give them a massive boost. So well done to them.
Right, well, yeah, interesting one that. We'll move on. Yeah, we talked about the amount of goals in the Eliteserien so far. There's been 63 goals in the league this season, and an average of 3.15 goals per game, which I find quite impressive for that league, which is sometimes low scoring. I also note that both teams have scored in 65% of the matches. And we're going to move on now to another one of those, which was Ranheim, which was a 4-1 victory for Ranheim against Stabæk. Now, this was actually Ranheim's first game of the season, wasn't it, Steve? Big result.
I couldn't believe this, mate. I really could not believe this result and performance. Because whereas that 4-1 Sandefjord win, all right, they took their chances, but it was not a fair reflection of the game. This 4-1 win for Ranheim was a fair reflection of how things went. They were really, really good. I mean, what a debut for them. I mean, before things got going, they scored within 2 minutes of the match. I looked at the live score and I'm like, bloody hell, they're 1-0 up already. But, I mean, this match was full of chances, full of goals at both ends to a degree, but I think Ranheim could have scored 6 or 7 here. Stabæk were absolutely shite. They were terrible. I think they came into this game thinking they'd have a fairly easy ride, They were good against Strømsgodset on the opening day, but they were terrible here. Left themselves far too exposed, completely underestimated their opponents. And I say well done to Ranheim. They were really good. I mean, they had a guy for them who scored 2 goals, Lockberg. He was actually doubtful with injury. He got the first 2 goals. Carlson bagged a couple as well. Top performance.
Yeah, I was going to move on to them, but I'm going to start with obviously Owie scored, but they were already 3-1 down by that stage. But good to see him on the score sheet. But yeah, as you mentioned, Lockberg and Carlson with 2 goals. Are they players to look out for this season, or were they just sort of a good day for them?
I was quite impressed. I mean, I'd never seen these players in action before myself, but Lockberg impressed me, and really good goal actually, his first one. And Carlson, the penalty he scored, I know it was only a penalty, he absolutely hammered it. No goalkeeper in the world would have saved that penalty. It's almost wasted on the Stabæk goalkeeper, Mandis Sayuba, who's a really terrible keeper. Every time there's a ball shot at him, I almost expect the net to bulge. He doesn't save many, but it was wasted on him. But yeah, fair play. Those 2 guys impressed me. Maybe they're a team to keep an eye out for, Ranheim. I don't know, but I certainly did not expect this, but they totally deserved it. Without doubt, performance of the week for me in the Eliteserien, Ranheim. Well,
the funny thing is they are considered Rosenborg's smaller brother, but they're actually above them in the table with 2 games in hand. So massive start for Ranheim there in 7th. And let's move on to Haugesund, which was another big win. They went to Bodø and got a 3-0 victory.
I think Haugesund are really underrated at the moment. They've had 2 great away wins against Odd and now Bodø Glimt. They have been counter-attacking really well. They've got a new Nigerian player called David Akintola, and he has got some pace, this guy. He absolutely tore Bodø Glimt apart at times in this game. Wasn't great defending from the hosts, that must be said. When, again, a bit similar to Start, actually. They kind of showed their inexperience at this level. I mean, you get away with it in the Obosli game, but at this level, if you leave yourself exposed, there's better players to punish you. So, yeah, I think Hawkinson are doing really well at the moment. They've had 2 wins out of 3. They lost to Molde. I'm not going to hold that against them. A lot of people were a bit pessimistic about them this season, but they look to have improved their offense an awful lot. They couldn't score goals last year, but they look much more dangerous. Budaglimt, I think that was a lesson for them in Eliteserien lesson. They've got to remind themselves they cannot leave themselves so vulnerable at the back.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Haug, I have to say. I like them for various reasons, although they're a bit of a, not the most loved teams, I don't think, in Norway necessarily. But yeah, I've got a bit of love for the Haug, I have to say. And the win takes them third, which is impressive. So they're in the top 3 with Sarpsborg and Molde. Let's just quickly run through the other scores before we kind of wrap things up. So we had Strømsgodset 1, Brann 1, Kristiansand 2, Lillestrøm 1. And yeah, that's really it, isn't it? We've covered every other game. Moving briefly before we wrap up this pod onto sort of players who've impressed you in this round. Was there anyone who kind of stood out? You asked me about 3 key teams maybe, or 3 most impressive teams. Let me ask you maybe for 3 most impressive players of the round.
Well, that David Akintola, who I mentioned for Haugesund, definitely caught my eye. I think Pontus Engblom deserves a great mention for Sandefjord, coming off the bench and scoring 2 goals. He made a big physical presence and difference up front. Nice to see him go well. And I would say that guy Lockberg for Ronheim looked really impressive for me today. Stabæk were not very good, but you've got to beat what's in front of you. So I'd say, those 3 catch my eye. Just before we end it, I just want to talk about the goal that Strømsgodset scored today. It was an own goal from Brann. Quite ridiculous. It was just a pass back to the goalkeeper, and he just kind of aimed it into the bottom left corner. It was quite remarkable. It looked like it was heading towards a 0-0 that game, and a remarkable own goal, John. So there was actually some incredibly calamitous moments in the whole round. You wouldn't have believed some of the mistakes that were made. Well,
it's been a big scoring week in the Eliteserien and a big scoring season so far, which is great to see. Looking ahead at the weekend, we've got Rosenborg Molde, which will be a big game on Sunday. Are there any other games that maybe catch your eye, or what are your sort of thoughts on Rosenborg Molde, which is going to be a massive game, really, isn't it?
Well, in a way, I wish this game was getting played sort of in the middle of summer. In my experience, when that fixture gets done in June, July, it often be full of goals, but probably going to be a bit cold still, and there's going to be nerves around there. Both teams, well, Rosenborg certainly not firing on all cylinders. They've got to win the game, haven't they? They can't afford to stay so far behind them. They've got to win the game. If they lose a game, it's an unthinkable situation. My personal feeling, it'll be quite a cagey affair. I think Molde will come there with quite a slow sort of game plan. Other games that catch my eye, there was one, let me have a look. Tromsø against Ranheim. Tromsø are the only team without a point so far, and they really need something here. Initially I was thinking it's going to be an easy home win for them, but after Ranheim's performance today, I'm kind of thinking otherwise. So what about in Sweden this weekend then? What are the big games to look out for?
Yeah, I've mentioned EFK Hamad-by on Tuesday is a big game. I think those 2 teams look good. I also think Malmö AIK is obviously a huge game. Malmö at home, so probably would expect them to win, but AIK want to be challengers, so they've got to step up, haven't they, in Skåne and prove themselves. That's on Monday. Those are the 2 games that stand out for me, really. I think Dalkurd maybe in their first home game against a similar sort of size club, Ostersunds in their recent history. That'll be an interesting one. But I'd say those are the 3 main games, really. I think that's about all we've got time for in this show, isn't it, Steve?
Yeah, that's it. We're going to have to wrap it up. So, yes, look out for our YouTube channel. I don't think we've mentioned this on the podcast yet, but we do have our own YouTube channel now. All episodes are posted on there. We're going to hopefully have some Goal of the Week compilations as well, which you can vote on Twitter, and they'll be posted up on YouTube as well. And we're on Facebook. Please give us a like on Facebook. Many different ways you can interact with us socially, social media, and really enjoyed this episode. We're going to be back next week, as ever, John, and very much look forward to it.
Yeah, and the Facebook, you can get us on facebook.com/Nordic Football Podcast, or just type Nordic Football Podcast into your Facebook, obviously, and give us a like. And yeah, obviously on Twitter as well. If you've got any questions, Twitter @NordicFootPod, you can get at us. And we'll look forward to doing this again in another week's time. glad to see the Swedish season back underway. And yeah, I've enjoyed the show. So from my co-host Steve Wyss and myself, Jonathan Fadugba, thanks for listening. Goodbye.